have to be concerned about, but that's like a big one thing. You know, if you pick one weakness, maybe not that one.
It's a tough one to work around, but maybe the Nihiligo's job is not dealing with the restricted. It's dealing with all the support Pokemon around it, and then you're just playing this restricted matchup very clearly. I do think Zac does have a number of concerns about ground weaknesses, the Solgaleo being one of them as well, but you got to be careful. You can't just be handing over weakness policy boost. That is a little bit silly and a little bit dangerous, and something that Aditya is going to have to think about right away as we see Solgaleo and the Calyrex Shadow Rider on the field going up against that Gothitelle and the Palkia. Quick question, does Gothitelle get knocked out turn 1 here?
I feel like it's got better odds than it's had, and now amazing odds because it's not even going to risk it.
Yeah, it's switching out immediately for the Incineroar, making sure to land and Intimidate. Not really going to help out here, right? The Solgaleo doesn't care, and of course that is a Shadow Rider Calyrex, not the Ice Rider that is very much impacted by it, but an early Dynamax from Zac's side of the field makes a whole lot of sense. I think Solgaleo is a really good candidate for this, but then of course there is the option to go for it with the Shadow Rider Calyrex. It is Solgaleo. Makes sense, can take a hit a little bit better from something like that Palkia, and then maybe, capitalize on the weakness policy a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a bunch of quick Dynamaxes in this matchup so far, but it's only one Dynamax this time.
And that Dynamax is immediately getting its weakness policy activated by the Bulldoze from the Shadow Rider Calyrex. That Bulldoze doing even less damage because of the Intimidate, so it kind of works out, right? But, it still wasn't going to be doing very much at all. The speed's dropping as well over onto the Incineroar and the Palkia. The Incineroar immediately forced to leave the field, that eject button immediately activated by the Bulldoze. So whatever comes in here is going to have to be a little bit scared of potentially what is coming. That Gothitelle comes right back in, didn't really get to stay away for that long, and I like this Max Quake. These special defense boosts are going to be really important, particularly when the only thing attacking is going to be a Palkia this turn.
Yeah, but well played by Adi. It would have been that turn 1 knockout of the Gothitelle, but it narrowly gets to scrape by with that Focus Sash.
Yeah, the Focus Sash really, really important there in making sure it sticks around. But the Palkia immediately goes for the Trick Room. It was, of course, going slow, and that kind of takes advantage right of the Bulldoze. So
yeah.
you're already going to struggle, but the Bulldoze just says, yeah, you're actually just slow now.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well, too. I mean, it kind of looked a little strange where maybe there's a lot of resources committed to getting Gothitelle back in at 1 HP. But now with this Trick Room active against 2 quicker Pokemon, a chance to launch off some more of those Hypnosis, probably.
Maybe starting the coin flip. You've only got 1 turn. If you don't hit that Hypnosis, you are going to be in a little bit of trouble. But you're in a great position to do it because you are, of course, sitting in there.
Or a horrible position.
Yeah, Zac has made sure that the Hypnosis is a no-no by switching in the Misty Surge, the Misty Terrain coming into play. And you have to hope, if you're Adi, that you thought about that. That is something you saw at Team Preview. And yeah, rightfully so, going for the helping hand here.
Yeah, really smart play there. We are going to see, the weakness policy is activated already, so why not just go for the Earth Power?
You may as well, but it got that special defense boost from the earlier Max Quake as well, and I think that's going to be really impactful as another one comes through, targeting into the Palkia, and there's the knockout that it needed. Another special defense boost. If you're Ardi, you've got to start looking over to some of these more physical attackers right now, because otherwise the Solgaleo is going to just be a wall that you can't get through. Nice respect, of course, from the Gothitelle. But at the end of the day, the helping hand really, I don't think, made enough of an impact on that Solgaleo.
Yeah, kind of funny, too. You see Gothitelle just getting ignored there, letting it hang around at 1 HP. With the Misty Terrain up, we kind of reverse of the usual situation, right? Normally, Gothitelle is trapping other Pokemon with it. Now, Gothitelle's kind of trapped in with them, right? Where it can switch out, but doing so is dangerous, so it's kind of just hanging out, not being super effective without the option to really disrupt the game with Hypnosis.
That Calyrex Shadow Rider being able to switch out there is really, really useful for Zac. Being able to get that Misty Terrain in is absolutely huge, and you've got to give credit to Ardi for being able to see that and play around it. But Ardi with 2 traditionally more supportive Pokemon on the field, pivoting into a Dynamax. And the Dynamax Incineroar has been more frequent than I was expecting this weekend. It does provide a number of very interesting options, and one of those options is more damage on this Solgaleo. It is a physical attacker, so it's not going to be worried about those special defense boosts from the Max Quakes.
Yeah, that's something we see very often. It does have a fantastic matchup on the type side with both of the restricted Pokemon on the other side.
Yep, the Max Flare will head towards that Solgaleo, and it is going to be enough for a knockout. So the Incineroar is the new Trick Room Sweeper, I believe we're looking at in this game. The helping hand makes sure, and the control goes up, of course, with the Sun. So follow-up Max Flares will be doing a little bit more damage, and that Solgaleo, yes, it was set up to deal with special attackers, but a physical attacker easily felled it.
Yeah, I really love that play, too. it's a little weird to think of Dynamaxing the Incineroar. We do see the Gothitelle finally going down. It's well, is that the most common Pokemon to Dynamax? But I thought it was a little strange. We didn't see Palkia Dynamax immediately. Often with Palkia, you kind of just go in, so it makes sense. And yeah, with Rillaboom as the last Pokemon, Incineroar by far the best choice. It's Calyrex staying at home this time.
Well, Calyrex on Zac's side of the field, the Shadow Rider, is also going to really struggle against this Incineroar, particularly Dynamax. I'm not saying that Incineroar's damage is bad, but it certainly looks a lot better when it's a Max Darkness rather than something like the Throat Chop. And just getting that extra bit of damage kind of forces here the hand a little bit. This does mean that it is a double physical attacking pair though, and I think that plays nicely into Zac's endgame board, right? As he can just set up a Reflect. That Reflect is going to be really, really impactful, and that may be enough wiggle room to get him through the rest of this game.
Yeah, he's going to have to stall out this Trick Room and also kind of just stall out this Dynamax as well. Good Pokemon to do it with. It's kind of weird where you kind of get forced to send out two supportive Pokemon on both sides of the field, but Grimmsnarl and Tapu Fini, they're sturdy enough they can probably get through this, but I really like the Pokemon selection by Adi, where Tapu Fini kind of just has to stay here with Rillaboom. There's not really a choice.
Yeah, the Rillaboom has to get through that Tapu Fini. The Reflect is going to help out, and that is, of course, what is set up by this Grimmsnarl. But yeah, the Grassy Glide would have got the knockout if it wasn't for that Reflect, so a very clear and obvious choice as Max Flare taking advantage of the sun, going into the Tapu Fini. Not enough, though, for that knockout. It is sitting around, and that is going to be important when it comes to just trying to set up. I like that the Tapu Fini didn't play too defensively. There's still a little bit more Trick Room to go, right? And you've got to be respectful of that. The Tapu Fini as well may not even have access to Protect, as we've seen some of those controversial builds coming around.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one of those Pokemon, right, where there's about 7 moves you really wanted to learn. Sometimes you feel like you can get away with Protect. Tapu Fini, not usually the highest priority Pokemon to burn down. Here it makes a big difference, right, because you want to avoid taking too much damage on Incineroar before Calyrex has to come back in the battle.
Yep, well, the Tapu Fini finally failed that follow-up. Grassy Glide is enough. The Reflect not able to save it in that instance. And of course, the Incineroar that's 3 Max Flares, 3 Dynamax turns, 3 Max Flares. Taking advantage of the sun, bringing the Grimmsnarl pretty low, and I like getting that damage down with the Spirit Break, right? It looks a little bit silly. You are lowering a stat that it doesn't really worry about so much, but you need to soften it up so this Calyrex Shadow Rider has at least a fighting chance of being able to get there. That said, this Calyrex Shadow Rider, looking at Zac's build and seeing it in gameplay yesterday as well, certainly a little lacking, I'd say, when it comes to coverage options. That's always a problem anyway, so gonna have to be very, very careful around how you close out this game. Yeah, it's one of the tricky elements of using one of your restricted Pokemon to help set up a combination like the weakness policy thing, right? Where you have to give something up to have a move like Bulldoze that normally you wouldn't have. Even though Bulldoze is super effective in this Incineroar, certainly not something you want to use to actually try to knock out another Pokemon, and the type matchup just really not favoring him here. Super effective is great. Low damage is not, right? Like, it's nice to be able to hit super effectively, but you still need a good amount of damage to be able to answer that. The Calyrex Shadow Rider is, of course, going to be the focal point for Zac, and I do like that Artie's just sat here, yes, it is, of course, very, very fast, but you've got complete control of the terrain at this point, and Grassy Glides are still going to hurt. Yes, the Reflect is up, but I don't know if Calyrex has enough in the tank to be able to push through this, because apart from maybe now Spirit Breaks, I don't think Grimmsnarl offers anything else at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem with Grimmsnarl, right? It's got to use something. We saw it use the Reflect already, but so many of the other moves that Grimmsnarl often knows, not very good in this matchup, and burning down the Incineroar fast enough is going to be really challenging.
Now, Calyrex smartly protecting itself here, wants to see if maybe a little bit of chip damage can be weaved in. The Grassy Glide, though, does head towards that Grimmsnarl, and the Reflect keeping it safe. Grimmsnarl fires back with the Spirit Break nicely into the Incineroar, so bringing that low could be important for the numbers. Of course, there is going to be a little bit of damage between turns as the Throat Chop from the Incineroar heads towards that Calyrex. So I like that turn a lot from Zac. I think very respectful, just making sure the Calyrex is in a better position. The Grimmsnarl, is getting quite low, but it's done enough and bought enough time to put Zac in a position where an Astral Barrage could maybe seal up this game for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he has to do, right? Where it doesn't feel great just to be attacking with Grimmsnarl, desperately trying to knock down the Incineroar HP, but that's all it is, right? Where Incineroar gets to catch Calyrex, it's pretty clear who's going to win this game. So Grimmsnarl's doing a good job. It's not the goal to start a game and wind up with Desperation Grimmsnarl as your main attacker, but with Incineroar as the main attacker at the other side, it's not a very conventional game.
It's a little bit off meta, I think is fair to say. The Pokemon selected are pretty meta, but the gameplay has been real top level, right? It's finding these odd win conditions. The Pollen Puff coming through from the Calyrex Shadow Rider will land into that Incineroar, not get the knockout, and an easy knockoff towards that Calyrex is going to be bringing it down to its Focus Sash. The Grimmsnarl follows up with the Spirit Break here, landing into that Incineroar, being able to take it out. But, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done against this Rillaboom, which, you know, still has access to its terrain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a critical factor here. Also, been ignored so long, it is healed up almost full, or almost to full HP here. Yeah, it's been a nice job kind of by both sides just whittling this down. But, I mean, Incineroar did so much before it fainted. You know, even if you see Zac stall out the grassy terrain here, there's still a lot of ground to make up. And typically Grimmsnarl, unlike Calyrex, isn't able to protect. So there's still a prediction to make here.
Right, I think if the Calyrex protects, you're basically banking on, will Astral Barrage do it? And that's not a bad bet to take, particularly with its single target now. Maybe that's why Zac targeted that Incineroar so aggressively, was so Astral Barrage will be single target. You can, of course, on the Calyrex, protect through this final turn of grassy terrain, and that's going to immediately say, well, I don't want to deal with this. But no protect coming through from the Calyrex. Maybe trying to just weave in another Astral Barrage. This is a very cheeky play, but I do really like it, because after this turn, it's going to be going away. The Pollen Puff lands into the Rillaboom. Super effective hit, obviously, but I still think Astral Barrage does more. And now you're basically saying, you know, you don't have Grassy Glide anymore. It's just a straight up, can Calyrex do the requisite amount of damage?
Yeah, I mean, I love that cheeky play by Zac there, because he needed it, but yeah, another Pollen Puff doesn't look like it would be enough. So
not after the healing.
See if we see Astral Barrage perhaps this time, and maybe it'll do a little bit more damage. It'll be a really close finish to this first game. It's
going to be down to the wire, no terrain. This is a straight up 1v1. Just, you know, the Calyrex is faster. You know that it's basically it's been given the task. You've got to do just over half of Rillaboom's damage. Health in one turn. The Calyrex does pivot over to the Astral Barrage, learning that the Pollen Puff was not enough, making sure that, and that, honestly, that cheeky Pollen Puff last turn, so close, but the recovery between turns and leaving that Rillaboom alone for so long has come back to haunt Zac, as Adi does not get there with the damage. I don't know if 2 Astral Barrages would have done it, or, you know, the Pollen Puff was just falling short, but wow, that was a close one.
What a great game. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh man, 9 HP. I mean, oh gosh, there's so many ways that, you know, you can get that extra damage in there. It doesn't quite happen this time for Zac. What a great game.
That was really, really good. And maybe that's a piece of information that has now been given up by Ardi. I mean, I don't want to be too blunt about it, but it took special attacks rather well. And I think that's a piece of information that Zac was unaware of. Kind of affects his decision going into the last game. I mean, the Rillaboom was never protecting. I mean, I know that you can get around without Protect. There's obviously a lot of moves that you want to take on it, but that's something he's got to think about coming into the final few games, because that Rillaboom, yeah, had a good match against Tapu Fini. I think against the rest of the board, it was fine. You know, did well with the knockoff as well, but it just kind of got left to run the game at the end there.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of as you said, right, we've seen a suspicious combination of moves and stats already, and I think that's good information to get out of that first game. I think other good information to get out of that first game for Zac is the way that Adi played that. It's a little different than anything we've seen from this team so far, where it tends to be so Calyrex focused with the Ice Rider rather than the Shadow Rider, but this time Incineroar was the hero. Did a ton of damage for Pokemon traditionally known more for playing a supportive role, and I think it was just really smart, right? I think there's a great matchup there with the way it plays against the most important Pokemon on Zac's side of the team. We're talking a bunch before the first game about Aniliego. We don't see it that game, and certainly a Pokemon that would have had a much better matchup with what wound up Dynamaxing.
Yeah, I think the Nihilego would have been pretty big there, right? It would have handled that Rillaboom comfortably. I mean, the game was quite comfortably run by the Rillaboom and the Incineroar, which the Nihilego has a really, really good matchup against with a combination of Meteor Beam and Sludge Bomb. Of course, the Sludge Bomb we now know is going to struggle a little bit. It's going to be going up against the Assault Vest, but you still have an option there, right? And you can also Dynamax it, maybe pivot over to the Max Ooze, boost your special attack, which kind of nullifies the effect of the Assault Vest. So while I don't think Zac played it badly, I think maybe an over-reliance on the tried and true Sol Galeo setup might need to start pivoting away from that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think too, I mean, I think he likely, you know, didn't expect the combination of Pokemon he wound up seeing for Adi. I think it was a really good, kind of just one step ahead sort of turn zero move where, you know, Rillaboom was probably not the fourth Pokemon that Zac was expecting, even like decently deep into that game. I think being able to have that sort of mix-up is really scary because it makes this game too really hard, right? Like I think based on game one, whether you do this Solgaleo thing or not, to me I think you want one of your 4 Pokemon to be Nihilego. But what's tricky about that is, there's no rule that says Adi has to do what he did in game one, right?
Oh,
and I think different combinations of Pokemon could expose that. So really good series, I feel like. A really great advantage to be up 1-0 and kind of not have to live or die by making that turn 0 read correctly.
I like the Nihilego option. I think that would be really important. It's tough to justify what you leave at home, though, right? Because the Tapu Fini was so essential to threaten and shut down the Hypnosis. There is the world, I think, where you bluff the Tapu Fini. Like, you saw that Adi was very respectful of it in game number 1, and so you just say, okay, well, I'm just going to bluff it and see how much you can get away with it. It's audacious, but it could work, and it's that Gastrodon effect, right? You don't want to throw out a move that is going to be an absolute waste, because every turn matters in these games.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. We see Gothitelle turn 1 again, not dissuaded from bringing it by seeing the Tapu Fini in the previous match. So, it'd be tough to make that read, like, oh, I don't think you're bringing Tapu Fini in this time, but it is an option. It's
certainly something that the Tapu Fini can threaten, and the Gothitelle has to be very respectful of. I'd like to see maybe the Palkia go a little bit more on the offensive. I think that was something that was lacking. Seeing a Palkia go down with doing so little was disappointing to me, and the fact he won the game without the Palkia shows that there's more this team has to offer, right? And that is definitely concerning. But Zac's committed to this Solgaleo and knows that it's the focal point of the team, that you've committed your Shadow Rider Calyrex to setting it up, so you do have to justify it quite quickly, I'd say.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, basically committing both your restricted Pokemon in one strategy, but just a lot of power kind of all grouped together on one hand, right? And you kind of have to play it out. We do see Palkia Dynamaxing, correcting perhaps the playstyle error that you were mentioning, and maybe a more conventional way of playing this team.
I like this, and with the helping hand as well, it just feels a little bit nicer, but it's not going to be helping handed this turn, as the Palkia just protects. That's absolutely fine. Doesn't want to get caught by this Bulldoze. What is interesting here, though, of course, is the Gothitelle will be caught by the Bulldoze, breaking the Focus Sash, and that could be really impactful. If Zac has targeted this down, we could be going back to the world of Gothitelle gets knocked out turn 1. I imagine the Palkia is going to be taking a little more attention, and if he's fallen for the Max Guard, there's going to be some big problems, and there it is.
Great read.
Yeah, that's a really nice read, as of course this Gothitelle just gets to set up the Trick Room for free, so those Bulldozers didn't hit the Palkia, obviously, but, the Gothitelle's now going to be the fastest thing on the field, so to speak. And, yeah, it's up to Zac. Do you show the Tapu Fini, or did you bluff it and you're about to get caught with a rather nasty Hypnosis?
Right, and I think that's what's scary here, too, because he doesn't have to immediately go for that if he doesn't want to,
Yeah.
Like hide the Hypnosis a turn or two more. It's really tough just to burn the Gothitelle down here. We've kind of seen that that's, like, perhaps the ideal strategy here, but, there's the option to switch. Just ignoring the Dynamax Palkia is a choice that you can make, but a tough one.
Well, the Calyrex switches out, and there it is, the reveal of the Tapu Fini. Zac being very respectful of the fact that Gothitelle's in, it's healthy enough to maybe fire off a Hypnosis, but set up that Misty Surge and you don't have to worry about that. The Gothitelle, though, probably knows that that's coming and immediately goes for that helping hand. Just heads up play from Adi, saw it game 1, why not respect it in game 2, as Max Quake will land into that Solgaleo. That's going to take a large amount of damage. That is a very big problem. The Palkia being Dynamax. Guess what? Max Quake better than Earth Power.
Yeah, and also no special defense boost this time.
Yeah, not getting that Max Quake through turn 1 is starting to hurt out, as Max Mindstorm fires back from the Palkia, from the Solgaleo into the Palkia. That will, of course, take away the Misty Terrain that you just set up. So Tapu Fini could be in a little bit of a strange position here, right? Yes, the Tapu Fini may be able to land a Fairy-type attack into this Palkia, which has been nicely softened up. But the Gothitelle is now feeling real good about its chances to Hypnosis. I like the helping hand, but Palkia doesn't really need it. If it wants to do a Solgaleo, it's going to get the damage there. The Tapu Fini is going to be the only thing attacking, and I'd rather the Tapu Fini attack than the Solgaleo, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be kind of tricky, right? Where there's still 3 turns left in Trick Room, and Tapu Fini's already on the field. So if you want to get that Misty Terrain up, you're going to have to commit a lot of resources. At this point, there's really nothing you can do. You kind of just have to hope you dodge the Hypnosis now. Really dangerous way to play this game, already down 0-1 in the set.
Yeah, that's certainly a bold play, but trying to mix it up. Maybe thinking the Max Mindstorm was just going to do more damage and get the knockout on Palkia, but with it falling short, it causes problems. Solgaleo heads up, just decides to Max Guard, as the Hypnosis does miss into the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini taking advantage of the Trick Room. The Dazzling Gleam, though, not enough to connect on that Palkia because of those Max Quakes. Those Max Quake special defense boosts really, really impactful in this game, and making sure that you can take that hit really means Adi gets away with it that turn a little bit. Of course, the Palkia very low now, could get knocked out, but, you know, both of the Dynamaxes are over, and you're still in Trick Room if you're Adi, so you're in exactly the same position right now, just with your Palkia a little bit lower.
Yeah, I mean, does avoid you know, doing anything too silly with the turn that Solgaleo protected there. So you know, it's so low, but it's almost not worth it anymore. But he is, you know, able to be hit by Hypnosis potentially now. I think that was a nice play on his side where he did call the protect. He just didn't get the Hypnosis to land to get the value from it.
Yeah, that's a tough one as Tapu Fini stays awake, but it could go to sleep this turn, not controlling the terrain. Psychic Terrain and Misty Terrain do look very similar, but this is, of course, the Psychic Terrain from the earlier Max Mindstorm. Solgaleo goes for the protect, does not get it, as the Hypnosis comes through into the Tapu Fini, so no terrain to save it this time. This could get really quite nasty for Zac very, very quickly, as the Solgaleo didn't do anything in response. Palkia fires off an Earth Power. That will easily take out this Solgaleo and down a Pokemon with one asleep. Adi is very much in the driving seat.
Yeah, he's just played a brilliant game so far. He's been basically perfect every turn. We do see Palkia going down, but that does give him a free switch as well, so not the worst thing in the world. And now we have a trapped Tapu Fini asleep. You don't see this too often, but yeah, the one scenario where this can occur, I guess.
If there was only a Pokemon on Adi's team which was really good against Tapu Fini that we saw in Game 1 and had a surprisingly large impact, now would probably be the time to reveal it, right? Because outside of, you know, a complete change, what did Zac bring that can deal with this this Rillaboom? You know, you've got to be careful what you bring in now. Yes, the Calyrex has come in, and that to me kind of screams that he hasn't bought an easy Rillaboom answer, right? Rillaboom a little bit telegraphed. If you had a Rotom Heat or a Nihilego, that would have been the turn for it, and doesn't feel like those adaptations have come through.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Where Zac kind of played this series very honest. We're like, well, I'm afraid of these things, so I'm going to bring these things. He didn't switch it up too much, where I think Adi had a great Game 1 plan, and he's been even better in Game 2. We're like, well, you didn't do quite what I thought you were going to do either, perhaps, so I'm going to adjust to be even better, and Zac feels just a step behind in this game.
He's been a step behind since the Max Mindstorm, really. Is taking away the terrain, allowed that Gothitelle to do the thing that Gothitelle is getting known for and getting that reputation for, which is just firing out Hypnosis. And as soon as your Tapu Fini falls asleep, you do fall behind a little bit, and the Tapu Fini, I mean, not being able to switch out is a huge problem, right? You know, there's no Grimmsnarl in either, so no Reflect. So the Grassy Glide is just going to be able to pick that up, and not having that feels very odd. I don't know if Zac's trying to save something in the back that he feels super confident in. As yeah, Adi reveals he's just bought the same 4. His strategy works so well Game 1, why not in Game 2?
Yeah, at least this time, Incineroar will be a little less devastating on the offensive side without the ability to Dynamax, but the type matchups are still there. Yeah,
well, the Rillaboom lands that Grassy Glide, no concern there. As Tapu Fini does hang on, so not getting knocked out, but still asleep in this turn. The Calyrex Shadow Rider is going next with an Astral Barrage. Of course, the Incineroar switch in just to take that much better than its partner Gothitelle. But look at that damage. It's just not enough. Even the spread damage, I mean, it does probably make you feel a little bit better about your Game 1 endgame where you weren't going to get it anyway, just because of how much impact that Assault Vest is having on that Rillaboom. But not getting anything back from the Tapu Fini, certainly going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, sort of an awkward play, too, where Gothitelle forced to come back out because of the eject button, but, you know, plenty of damage, and crucially does get Shadow Tag back active, right, where Tapu Fini was briefly free for about half of that turn and now is trapped once again. And kind of almost an even worse position now, where, like, being mostly knocked out and asleep makes it so easy to just kind of, like, ignore and deal with it whenever you feel like it. Subramanian said he'd like to set Trick Room up again at some point, but I'm not sure he even really needs it.
No, I don't think it's something he needs at all. As the Fake Out just lands into the Tapu Fini, another Astral Barrage from the Calyrex here, another kind of underwhelming amount of damage into the Rillaboom. Does a little bit more, I think, than the last time, and of course that Gothitelle finally faints. But the Calyrex does get the Grenade boost. That may be the option, particularly now we're in this point with no Trick Room. Trick Room wasn't reset, but Tapu Fini remaining asleep in this turn. The Calyrex, though, not able to really continue playing the game after this turn, as the knockoff immediately brings it down to its Focus Sash. It gets to hang on, and I don't know if you can stall all the way through this grassy terrain at this point, as there's a lot longer to go than in the last game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough pit where, yeah, I mean, there just aren't a whole lot of options here. At least there's the option of switching now, like very briefly at least, with 2 Pokemon in the field that have a combined total of 53 hit points. But with Incineroar coming back out here, no more eject button, or any Pokemon to switch out to, but he is threatening that Fake Out, which makes this turn even easier, where there aren't a whole lot of hard reads on Zac's side that are really going to get him any better board state.
Yeah, you just keep the Tapu Fini pinned down with Fake Outs. You know, even if it wakes up, it doesn't get to move, haha. And then you can easily polish off the Calyrex with a knockoff, a Grassy Glide even, just to make sure you don't take any extra or unwanted damage over on that side. So it's a really well-played board state. You got to wonder if you're Zac, what is that 4th Pokemon and why isn't it showing up, right? It's like, if it's the Grimmsnarl, that's not what you save for the back. Maybe it's something like the Nihilego, where he's hoping he can take a knockout here and just put the Nihilego in a 1v1 situation that it can win. But it's certainly going to be a tough one, as Tapu Fini does leave, so we do get to see it. And yeah, the Grimmsnarl to end is not the pivotal Pokemon I'd argue you need. Yeah,
I mean, potentially at least helps out here. Can try and reduce some incoming damage, I guess, but I just don't know how you reduce it enough to actually prevent a knockout on one of the Pokemon on the other slide. And we do see a Flare Blitz coming in, so Grimmsnarl's not even going to get in for free.
Yeah, it takes quite a large amount of damage there as the recoil will start to add up. But the recoil, of course, is going to be counteracted by this recovery from the grassy terrain. There is a world, maybe, where you, you know, it's kind of the end of game 1 again, right? Is this Grimmsnarl needs to buy time and chip Pokemon down.
Yeah, the one thing that does help it is, I mean, he can stall out the grassy terrain now because he's going to simply send out Tapu Fini as a sacrifice and get rid of it.
Yep.
So at least there's at least one more attack that will be coming from this Calyrex probably. But yeah, I mean, last Pokemon Grimmsnarl, I'm a little puzzled, right? Where I think either of the other Pokemon potentially are huge swings in this matchup. We didn't see Grimmsnarl do a whole lot the first game. Did like surprisingly whittle away a lot of damage with that Spirit Break, but it's going to be tough. You know, there's a lot, again, there's a lot of damage away from getting to the point where this game's going to be closed out.
Well, there's the Tapu Fini switch in, as you called. It is going to take away that grassy terrain, and that does mean that the Rillaboom doesn't have access to its priority Grassy Glide. It's not going to be able to reset that terrain either, as it's the final 2, and it's kind of strange that Adi is down in Pokemon, but very much in the driving seat here. Calyrex gets to fire off that Astral Barrage. That will connect with both Pokemon, but the damage underwhelming. It is enough, though, on to that Rillaboom this time. So getting it all the way there. The Grenade boost from earlier coming through. This now gets a little bit dicey. Of course, the Rillaboom does get to... the Incineroar, my apologies, gets to land that Throat Chop. So the Grenade boost is not going to be sticking. That Grenade boost coming back from earlier. Ardy now in a 2v1 situation. Zac, I love that switch into Tapu Fini because, you know, yes, it's low, but what does Incineroar do against the Tapu Fini? At some point, it's going to wake up, and at some point, it's going to start landing attacks.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps played with his food a little bit too long here, where, you know, Tapu Fini not going to be the most threatening offensively, but Incineroar is only going to be able to knock out these Pokemon so quickly. I mean, Tapu Fini is still healthy enough that probably going to take Incineroar 2 swings. That's going to be a lot of attacks going the other way, even if they're just weaker Dazzling Gleams and Spirit Breaks.
It's definitely going to take a couple swings, but it may not even be afforded the opportunity as Tapu Fini lands that Scald. Easy knockout onto that Incineroar, and we got it. We're heading to game 3.
Oh, the legends were true. It can go to the 3rd game in this set.
That was a really nice endgame from Zac, and I think maybe myself a little bit guilty of writing him off. Like, he felt very behind the pace, but he found that option, and the Tapu Fini switch out, switch in worked so nicely in the end, because the big concern, the thing he had to stall in game 1, was removed from play. Really well done to come back with what we thought was a pretty defensive option.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, where like I'm still not sure about the Grimmsnarl, right? Where I feel like either of the other 2 Pokemon could also have contributed to that win. What was most interesting to me is kind of the way that Tapu Fini wound up playing out there, where like, you know, it basically didn't do anything until the last turn. Didn't anything actively to the last turn, but, you know, having that ability, you know, even though it was asleep and kind of useless, you know, Misty Terrain still works when you're, or Misty Surge rather, still works when you're asleep, right? You know, it came back in at the right time, and even though it pretty much never had control of the terrain, the one turn where it really mattered, the terrain was what it needed to be. I guess we're really seeing the value of Tapu Fini there. I think even that one, we're like, well, maybe you don't need it, but especially because it seems like a little different of a Tapu Fini build than we're used to seeing. It's mostly been those defensive Tapu Finis, usually a bunch of support moves. Scald is a little suspicious. That's not a move that typically Tapu Fini is taught anymore.
Not for a few years, no, and I think that gives away exactly what this Tapu Fini is carrying item-wise. The Tapu Fini's still scared of the Rillaboom, but it showed its value there. The thing I'd drop is maybe that Grimmsnarl, but Grimmsnarl bought time, right? Like, Grimmsnarl was able to switch in, take some hits. That kind of did its job, and I think you called it very nicely in the penultimate turn of the game, is Ardy played with his food too long. He took too long to close out that game and got punished. There's only so long you can pin stuff with Fake Out. that, I mean, one turn at a time, right? There's only so long you can do that until you're in a position where it's like, I have run out of tools. Particularly when you're down to your final two, you don't have switches, so you're just stuck there and maybe needing to find a little bit more damage a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I could see this set going either way, too. I think both sides have played really well. I'm super excited to see how this one plays out.
Well, the change already from Zac's side of the field, we did say he was maybe overcommitting a little bit to that Solgaleo option, and it is a change. Tapu Fini and Calyrex coming through, but bad news for Tapu Fini, the MVP of the last game. It's immediately facing down against that Rillaboom. Partnered up, of course, with the Gothitelle. Not going to be able to leave right now.
Yeah, as much as... you know, Zac's been playing well. These Adi turn 0s, I guess, have been amazing, where it always just seems like he has a little bit of an advantage in that first turn. I like Zac switching up. He kind of does what you were hoping he would do last game, but unfortunately kind of still feels like he's a game behind here and he has to deal with the mismatch of these terrain Pokemon.
Yep, the Tapu Fini is going to be saying... I've got control of the terrain. No, he didn't, because of course it's head over to the Rillaboom, looking at the training. And that's the ultimate giveaway, right? Of like how this Tapu Fini is trained. Like, why is this Tapu Fini so fast? That is not correct.
Yeah, right. And yeah, I guess thought he didn't figure that out from how effective that Scald was in the presence of the Scald. Completely even more suspicious now. But however, it's important because I think in many other situations you kind of just ignore the Tapu Fini, like what's it really going to do? Definitely not the case here, where you do have to be concerned about it.
Yep, well, the fake out coming through from the Rillaboom, just making sure that Tapu Fini takes a nice little chunk of damage. Calyrex immediately firing back with an Astral Barrage, of course, not worried about the fake out, bringing nice and easy Gothitelle down to its Focus Sash. The same similar chunk of damage we've seen, of course, from the onto the Rillaboom with its Assault Vest every single time, and then we get a nice round of healing. So a very safe turn one from Adi, and I feel like he's just in an even better position, right? He's got control of the terrain, he's got the Tapu Fini locked in with the Shadow Tag, and can just start throwing out the Hypnosis.
Yeah, I think it's kind of perfect. Yeah, Gothitelle's in the best position. We've seen it being all set. Didn't have to commit too much to do that. I mean, most of Gothitelle's health, but I think it's basically a Pokemon, it's almost shit injure, right? Where it's going to get hit twice and then it goes down, so not that big of a deal. And then this is the first time where I didn't have to commit Palkia in order to start getting the game set up, right? Potentially there's still at least one, maybe two Pokemon in the back that are at, restricted Pokemon at full health where, if he can shift around now, where it's probably aren't the two Pokemon you want in the field, at least for the final Trick Room of the game. But we see avoiding Shadow Tag with that Ghost typing once again.
Yep, and Grimmsnarl coming out to play earlier, so you have to imagine it's a similar four, or the Solgaleo has been left at home. Rillaboom getting the benefit of the Helping Hand, not even trying to mess around with the Hypnosis, as Grassy Glide just punishes this Tapu Fini, who is trapped in with the Shadow Tag. Easy knockout there, no concern, and the MVP of Game 2 immediately removed for Zac. Not getting anything done that turn. Adi definitely in the driving seat once again.
Yeah, and that lets Adi control the terrain for the rest of this match, right? Where whenever he needs grassy terrain up, if Rillaboom decides it needs to come in and out, there's not going to be any way to stop that. No more concern about Hypnosis being blocked by Misty Terrain. Really good spot. And again, he didn't need any restricted Pokemon to do this, so he still has several turns of Trick Room left. He picked up an easy knockout. Grimmsnarl, a little bit better position this time, where usually it's a Pokemon you want to get out a little early in matches so you can actually get the value from those support moves. I think it's just sort of a weird quirk of Zac's team that because he needs the Bulldoze, he sends the Pokemon out in kind of an unconventional order. And we do have to see the Solgaleo here.
Yeah, the Solgaleo, no mix-up in the four, just the order that they were bought in here as Zac definitely wants to play through this Solgaleo as much as possible, but it's not really looking too threatening right now. I mean, what does Solgaleo do to try and deal with something like the Rillaboom?
It's a huge read here, right? Because, Gothitelle's probably going to Hypnosis one of these Pokemon. It's a little bit telegraphed.
Yeah, the Solgaleo protecting itself. Grimmsnarl reflecting this turn. Yep, that's going to help out, but how much time does it really buy Zac? The Grassy Glide connecting nicely with the Grimmsnarl and the Hypnosis going into that Solgaleo. So just a turn where, you got the Reflect up, but will it buy you enough time if you're in Zac's shoes, as Adi still feels quite comfortable in this match?
I can't believe he didn't just take the knockout in the Gothitelle. I mean, I don't know if he just wants to stall at the Trick Room and the Gothitelle doesn't have a whole lot of offensive pressure here. But how do you stop getting one of your restricted Pokemon put to sleep now, right? You just have to hope you dodge the Hypnosis. That was kind of the opportunity to take that Spirit Break, is remove the threat of Gothitelle. We saw last round where Gavin was so aggressive about making sure he didn't have to deal with Gothitelle. A little bit different tact here. We'll have to see if it works out.
Yeah, maybe being, not respecting the Gothitelle enough, and considering where it's been in the past couple of weeks at regionals, I'm shocked to see it be on the field this long and allowed to run the game. That Shadow Tag does cause so many problems. Yeah, the Calyrex can switch out, but like, what do you switch in? Because everything feels like a little bit of a sacrificial lamb here that it's going to suffer. The Rillaboom does leave the field. It's not hitting anything super effective right now. Maybe wants to save itself for a knockoff over onto the Calyrex for a little bit later. And hey, an Intimidate, why not? It's not going to impact the Solgaleo. It's really not going to hurt the Grimmsnarl that much. But you got Fake Out for next turn.
See the Spirit Break coming in, and we do see the knockout in Gothitelle now. Avoids that Hypnosis. I guess it doesn't really matter. I just waited one extra turn. And then we do see the Sunsteel Strike coming down.
Yeah, Sunsteel Strike. I mean, this Solgaleo allowed to play the game a little bit. Could be really, really important. The other thing we haven't seen from either trainer so far is the Dynamax. And that may be the pivotal point for one of these trainers, right? Like, if they can weave in a key Dynamax, they could put themselves in a great position. But the Incineroar immediately forced out. Maybe we're just going to see the Rillaboom again, or Adi is going to have to reveal his fourth and final Pokemon. Only able to bring one of the restricted Pokemon, though. I'd imagine the Palkia has been doing so well. But this could be the hard pivot, right? To the Ice Rider Calyrex. Just take advantage of the Trick Room and try and tidy up that way.
Yeah, sort of awkward timing here where there's 2 turns left in Trick Room, so kind of need to do a little shuffle here. You're probably going to want to be able to fake out Trick Room one more time with whatever restricted Pokemon he did bring. He does need that one extra Trick Room. Right? Didn't get a whole lot out of this one. He's started to whittle down resources on the other side, and seemingly equally crucially, whittle down his own eject button. It seems like it's been more of a hindrance than a help so far this series.
It's a very strange item choice. Maybe something to dive into with some of the top trainers, because the justification is like, yeah, you get to switch out and do the Intimidate thing, but you don't really get control of it, right? Like, Parting Shot, you get to choose, and you get to choose where the drops go. In this case, you're just getting another Intimidate, and against special attackers, that seems a little bit lacking. But Incineroar is going to save itself for later, not immediately coming back in, because that Intimidate is, of course, low value. I mean, it's low value across the board here, just looking at the 4 that are selected. But still, no Dynamax. Where are we getting these Dynamaxes from? I think it's the Restricteds, but maybe there's a hard pivot available for one of these trainers.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see it either way. I think especially on Adi's side, you know, Palkia probably needs a Trick Room, so you can't Dynamax it yet unless you think that Palkia can just win clean. Perhaps we'll see the Dynamax Incineroar again, where there's still there's a bunch of Pokemon left that it deals with pretty well. You assume, we've only seen Dynamax Solgaleo from the other side of the field, and Incineroar matches up with that pretty well. Yeah,
Incineroar definitely looks like a good Dynamax candidate, dealing with both of these Restricteds in the combination of its typing, getting the same type of attack bonus, absolutely huge as well. Calyrex switches in for that Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl not worried about trying to set up any of these screens here, and it's actually Adi who goes for the first Dynamax of the game. So I really, really like this. I think the Palkia would be able to just sweep through the rest of the game here. It's just not got enough answers available, particularly that Solgaleo potentially attacking without the weakness policy.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that even with the weakness policy active, Palkia was trading pretty favorably. So yeah, maybe just don't make it more complicated than it needs to be, right? Don't worry about getting Trick Room again, just start blasting away.
Yeah, well, the Solgaleo playing it safe, just protecting this turn. That is going to make sure that the Fake Out doesn't get to do anything, as the Calyrex doesn't mind either way. But this Max Geyser is an interesting one, right? Yes, it does connect with the Protect, but I like that you just set the rain for yourself. And that means that the following Max Geyser also does more damage, and that's really, really important here if you do need this Palkia to sweep through the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice element too, right? It wasn't a very threatening turn. You kind of have one turn to play around a little bit before things started getting serious now that Trick Room has expired. So, wise play. It does matter, though, that we see the grassy terrain finally expiring. There's already Rillaboom on the field, so it needs to cycle in and out. Now would be a great time for that eject button if only it were still around.
And it was on Rillaboom, maybe. The Incineroar, though, would probably be quite safe coming in. I mean, it's going to take an Astral Barrage very, very nicely. It's not too threatened unless this Solgaleo maybe goes for, Dynamaxes and goes for a Max Quake. It's not carrying the Shucker Berry, so maybe you're able to get the knockout there. And honestly, the Max Quake would be the desired play. The Rillaboom, though, could just sit in and say, well, I can still knock off onto this Calyrex Shadow Rider. And even though you love the Grassy Glide, I think a lot of trainers maybe hone in so much on that Grassy Glide, they forget that it has other moves, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a crucial one here, right? Where, sashing Calyrex, it's a pretty good value for a non-restricted Pokemon.
Well, Calyrex does get to set up that weakness policy, taking the advantage in the turn where Trick Room is not set up and not able to get set up either, because of course the Palkia is in the Dynamax form. You can't Trick Room when you're a Dynamax Pokemon. It does pivot over to the Max Guard. Palkia's speed falling. Solgaleo correctly identifying the Max Quake here, but I imagine it was expecting that Incineroar to come back in, and I like that Adi doesn't take that bait, doesn't decide to go for it, doesn't really want that landing in this turn. The special defense is going to help out really big, but Palkia's Max Geyser is being boosted up by that rain set from the previous turn, so even with the special defense boost, still taking quite a lot of damage.
Yeah, I mean, without another special defense boost, it would be able to take another, and we guess we see a sort of feeble knockoff there, but it's enough for you're trying to whittle it down where even with another defense boost, maybe that a Max Geyser would pick up a knockout.
Yep, making sure that this Max Geyser will be the most impactful move this Palkia has to offer. And this Rillaboom, just, I mean, not really that threatened, right? Like, what are you going to do? Max Quake it again? You need to Max Quake. You need the special defense boost. You know that Rillaboom feels pretty okay with those ones, being able to take that very, very well. And the Palkia, you know, will take it as well. So the Max Quake, sort of the move you have to go with to deal with the opposing Palkia, but it's not getting knockouts, and that's a big concern as your Dynamax candidate.
Yeah, I mean, another factor here too is Calyrex now free from having to boost up Solgaleo, able to actually participate in the game, but we haven't seen it be the most damaging so far, but could be a big deal here.
Well, let's see how much this Astral Barrage does, as it does get the knockout onto that Rillaboom. I think the Rillaboom here, giving over a Grim Boost could be problematic in the long run, because you are going to need, of course, to double in to that Calyrex. The Max Mindstorm coming through here onto the Palkia is going to be a huge amount of damage, but not enough to pick up the knockout. Maybe just saying, you know, at this point, I feel good with my special defense boost I've got, and I don't need to go for any more, as another Max Geyser will land from this Palkia. This time, though, heading towards the Calyrex, bringing it down to its Focus Sash. Really, really important to break that at some point. But this Solgaleo, you know, still doing well, and crucially, Palkia knocks itself out, so the Max Mindstorm was huge here for Zac.
Yeah, it was just enough, right? Where I think maybe even if he traded Solgaleo, it would have been fine. He just... Adi's down to the point now, just Incinerate. You only get so many swings left. There's 2 Pokemon left on the other side of the field, and another Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's Grimmsnarl, right? We know that it's not exactly the offensive powerhouse that you need, but at this point, right, like you bring the Grimmsnarl in, I think, over this Calyrex and just save a bigger damage attack. You do have to give up the Grim Boost, which is a tough call to make, but you know, this is taking quite a lot of damage. There is a concern I have with the Solgaleo right now, and that's, I know what the ground type move is. I think maybe that was the out, but Zac taking the game as Adi just concedes and knows 3v1 is not